Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week by none other than Craig Taylor of Cyberhoot. Craig, welcome to the show.
Chris, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think let's just start with a little bit of your background, please, because I think this will help set the stage for the direction of today's topic, which is gaming, not shaming, when it comes to cybersecurity and the way threat actors, generally, I'll say for the most part, target individuals and organizations through one beautiful format, and that is email, and maybe even further along with some of the social engineering that's out there. But by and large, it's not because of a bad patch on my laptop that someone's compromising me, right?
Right. Yeah. So my background, Chris, thanks for asking, is a long time ago, I'd say 35 years ago, I got a degree in psychology, an undergraduate degree, where I studied all kinds of ways that people learn, how they don't learn, what works, what doesn't work, operant conditioning, positive and negative reinforcement, something we might talk about later. Fast forward 30 years in cybersecurity, I got my CISSP in 2001. Started out with a firewall vendor before there was a World Wide Web and an internet as we all know it today. That's how old I am. Dirt is probably not as old as me. And I've worked for Fortune 1000 companies, JP Morgan Chase, Vistaprint, Computer Sciences Corporation. I've worked for small MSPs and just about everything in between. 10 years ago, 11 now, I founded Cyberhoot, my company, with a couple of folks that I worked with at Computer Sciences Corp. And we've been bringing cyber literacy training and phishing simulations to everywhere on the internet, to every country of the world, not every country, but most of the parts of the world. I like to say we pay taxes in many countries now because we have nexus for income generated in those places. But that's me in a nutshell.
So today's conversation, going back to your undergrad in psychology, I think we have seen this all too often. You can use the pain path, but it, generally speaking, does not work with people. If you want somebody to do the right thing, or you want somebody to um, learn, it generally doesn't work by using things like, I remember playing the piano. I had and not to foreshadow, I think one of the examples you might give, I had a piano teacher who lived through the Holocaust, and
Oh
my
no.
my piano teacher, like if my hands didn't have the right form on the piano, he would smack them with this ruler or yardstick. I don't remember what it was exactly, and I think it maybe happened like 3 times that I can recall. But my piano lessons went from excited to go to piano lessons and learn some ridiculously long, painfully complicated, classical piano piece to I just don't want to do this at all anymore.
Right.
And I won't say that it was entirely the piano teacher's fault, but I would argue that had I had, like, Jamie Foxx, playing, the character of why did I just draw a blank? But uh, anyways, some sort of music that I would have been excited to listen to, right? It could have been any piano teacher. Like, yeah, you like rock and roll, you like country, whatever. I would have probably been more excited to participate, even if you still used the ruler on my knuckles.
I don't
Um,
believe that for a second. Chris, it wasn't your fault that you gave up piano. It was your teacher's fault. A completely 100%. You can maybe say, well, you might have been more cooperative or what have you, but you probably weren't cooperative because you were dreading it. You were fearful. You were waiting for the next knuckle rap. Um, that's a great example of negative reinforcement theory. It's designed to reduce bad behaviors. Maybe your posture was poor, your hands weren't in the right angle, but it leaves such a negative impression on you that you probably haven't picked up piano since. You don't play it anymore, you don't tinkle on it, nothing.
not really anymore, but I did pick it back up in high school and in college, but that was part of something else altogether. It actually
Mhm.
just contributed to something I was doing for music theory, but that's
Okay.
but again, it wasn't, You're right. I didn't stay at it. But
Mm.
that makes me think, when you say it that way, it makes me think about like the military, at least the way you see it in the movies, like, you know, failure to do something, like your bed's not made, it's drop and give me 20. You're not saluting well enough, drop and do, some sort of like not comfortable, or the attention is being pointed at you for what you didn't do right in front of the rest of the people that you're working with.
Yeah, I wouldn't go into that arena,
Oh,
honestly, because there's some good psychological theory around shared misery, tying people closer together. You hear about the brotherhood or the close ties that people have with their colleagues or their military buds through that shared misery. There is a strong correlation between unit cohesion and the ability to overcome difficulty and adversity through shared misery. That is another matter altogether. Fortunately, for all of us listening to this, we don't live in the military in our businesses, right? And shared misery isn't a concept that will be played out in most of the organizations and people listening to this podcast. Where
I
we
hope
can
not.
go, yeah, I hope not too. But what we can do is in psychology, you mentioned my psychology background. There is something called operant conditioning, and it sounds like a fancy term, but all it is two sides of a coin, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement. And I would argue that our industry as a whole, cyber literacy training, cyber security protection programs, focus too heavily on the negative reinforcement theory. And the best example that I think puts it into context for most people is you can train dogs with a shock collar to reduce bad behaviors like leaving the yard. There's an invisible fence, they get too
Sure.
close, they get shocked, or to stop barking. Or you can train dogs with treats. And you go to a dog park and the dog's happy, the tail's
Yeah.
wagging, getting treats as they learn different skill sets. The best, real world example is I think 2 years ago, America's Got Talent, Hurricane, the dog, won the whole thing over all these other acts because the trainer, the dog, the audience, the public loved the whole experience of this dog doing these magical things. And the trainer had a pocket full of treats and was rewarding the dog for all these wonderful tricks and behaviors that it had learned. And the dog was having fun. That's the most important thing. If you look at that translated to phishing simulations, the number one way companies listening to this are breached, you need to know that for the last 25 years, it's been email social engineering attacks, otherwise known as phishing. It's the number one way. To your point, it's not a missing patch on a laptop 9 out of 10 times or 19 out of 20 or maybe even 85 out of 100. It's literally people clicking on things they shouldn't. So the
Yeah.
theory is stop the click by punishing it and shaming you in your organization when you fail in these stage tests where they send you an email and you're not paying attention. You click on that link, but it's a company test and you failed it. That only goes so far. Like if you think about the shock collar approach with a dog, if there's a squirrel across the street and the dog has that shock collar on, he's still going to go after the squirrel because it's just too appealing of a target. No different than a really good phishing email coming into your employee's inbox. They're still going to click even when they know they're being punished and shamed for failures. They just don't know what the good behaviors are to prevent them from clicking. And that's where I think the industry needs to go. You need to teach and reward good behaviors, like looking at the typo squatted domain name of a fake email and deciding, hey, this is not Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix, whatever it might be, personally and professionally, because you know how typo squatting works. That's a single letter difference or a period in the wrong place of a domain name impersonating a vendor. Or why emotionality and urgency are a hacker's best friend to get you to react to that email by clicking without thinking. If you responded to it, I can tell you, Chris, I've been part of dozens of investigations of ransomware and business email compromise. And to a person, they say, if I just thought a little bit more about it, I wouldn't have clicked. But it was such a great email, and I just felt the need to click. It was like that squirrel across the street. I just had to get it. And boom, I
You,
infected our whole company.
it's funny you say that, and I still have some thoughts on that. The psychology thing. One of them, maybe you've read this. Have you ever read the book Whale Done?
I have not.
So Whale Done is written about business management and leadership within an organization. And to your point about psychology, about if you were to use negative reinforcement for someone doing something wrong, what those repercussions are. And the whale done model is talking about how there is no way you are going to get into a swimming pool with a killer whale and use any sort of negative reinforcement and come out of there successful. It doesn't care. It's just not going to, like, you're either going to make it angry and then you don't exist anymore. Or on the positive side, you can, if you get it to do tricks, it's because of the positive reinforcement, right? And it just talks about that through the business side. So it kind of goes with what you were describing earlier. But the thing that got me when you mentioned the urgency and the emotional drama, there's two things that I see playing out today. One, the Nigerian prince fax that you got in 1990 back then is still the same type of playing upon your emotion or the desire to achieve something, gain something, help someone. Um, None of that's changed, playing on our emotions. The second one is our urgency around the work that we do, right? So, like, I'm at a stoplight. I have time to check my email because the light's red. So I've got time on my hands that I am clawing back in a day that's already full. And it floors me the number of times I've heard someone say, please take the external banner from the top of my email and either put it at the bottom or remove it altogether because I can't see the header of the email, which means I can't scroll while I'm sitting at the traffic light to make a decision to respond to something that I probably shouldn't be looking at in the first place.
Anyways, that's right. Yep.
It just gets
Bingo.
me every single time. It's inconvenient. I get it. You know what? Being a bad guy is probably inconvenient too. I have to deal with sometimes smart people that do the things the right way, and then I have to move on to somebody else. Good grief.
Yep. No, it's absolutely the case. And I think our employees, let's put this in the context, say, of an MSP, right? You
Sure.
work at GTIA, right? And you support MSPs all over the world, especially in the United States, and you want to give them good advice. An MSP's lifeblood is the value they add to their equation, to the company and to the employees of the companies they support. When you send fake emails and people make mistakes and click and they're publicly shamed, or they have a meeting with their manager, or they have a three strikes rule and they're fired, that's eroding your goodwill and your customer retention value as an MSP. It makes no sense. If I owned an MSP, I would never use fake email testing until long, long after I had used positive reinforcement theory to teach people how to phish. Teach them the typo squatting, the subject line, the greeting, the spelling, punctuation, and grammar mistakes, the emotionality and urgency, the links to external websites, including ampersands and percentage signs and URLs and bit.ly links that shorten it, and then attachments. If
Well,
you have those
you
seven
can get
things,
somebody to fail. You can purposefully craft a fake email by leveraging the things you know about the person you're targeting to ensure failure. That's a
right,
given.
especially when they don't have the rubric to guide them under duress, right?
Sure.
If you knew that a typo squatted domain name just had one letter off, instead of, when we say send fake email messages, Chris, you know this, you can't use a domain name that has Microsoft in it. You can't. They'll sue you. And we've been sued at my company 3 times. The IRS, Facebook, and Zoom have all sued us to stop using domain names that have some semblance of those vendors in the domain name for our fake email testing. It dumbs the user down because they get accustomed to seeing, accounts are us from a Microsoft email. Oh, that's not Microsoft. Delete. I didn't fail the test, right? Or smart people who put in the X headers that allow it through the mail relays, just filtering that out and sending it to dev null. But that's a secret tip that you should use, especially if you're getting all those fake emails from your company. But here's the thing, none of that teaches you the good behaviors. And
Right.
it dumbs you down for the bad behaviors so that in a really appealing, maybe
Desensitization to the reality that it is.
exactly right. So what we really focus on at Cyberhood, if I'm allowed to say that, is the positive reinforcement, the gamification, the certificates of completion, the avatar growth. As your maturity and your cyber literacy grows, you get bigger and stronger and meaner looking avatars. And we know people pay attention to that because we get support tickets, Chris, where my colleague is much bigger avatar than me. Why is that? Well, sir, you didn't do your training on time and you got more mistakes, so you get fewer points and you don't advance as quick. It's a gamification. And
Sure.
so they pay more attention. And again, we're rewarding the good behaviors that we want to see people expose, complete and get muscle memory on.
Right.
And then, you know what? Occasionally I get stopped in the streets of Portsmouth, who a lot of companies in Portsmouth use it because that's where our home base is. They'll say, Craig, I got an email in my personal inbox the other day, and I knew exactly that it was phishing because of what you did. We just did a hoot fish
Yeah.
the other day, and I'm so glad that I took that training because now I know, I understand it. I learned how to fish so I can process email for the rest of my life safely and securely, confidently.
Well, then it gets into the burden of responsibility that I think is often overlooked. We do it really, really, really well, and the someone else's responsibility when we talk about the work environment. But to your point, the example you gave about, at home on my personal email,
Hmm.
I know that I can't put that burden of responsibility on my IT department or the leadership team or anybody but myself, right? I can't even blame the bank, right? Like, you know, and I think this is some areas where we don't see a ton of education on things like I will never send you communication of this kind in this way, right? I'm not
Right.
going to send you an email to ask you to do something that's related to finances. I'm not going to ever, text you and say, hey, I need you to go get some gift cards from
Hmm.
fill in the blank place. And I don't know why they do this, but it seems to be popular. Like, go to Best Buy and get some gift cards. I'm like, dude, why not go to Walmart? You have way more choices on gift cards, like way better selection. Like, anyways, I digress on that one. Um,
Yeah.
on on another note, when it comes to the education piece, I think I liked what you said about the positive reinforcement, but there's another element to this too that I think is often overlooked. Um, I've talked about this even with my wife, and she works for an MSP and has done you get she gets excited about the FICO score she has, and I'm like, yeah, but this isn't about buying a house, right?
Hmm.
Like this, I get how they've shown you that with a higher FICO score, you're doing better than those with the low FICO score. I get it, but here's the thing: the types of testing that's being done in the real world is still super easy and high probability of being exploited because all it has to do is be right one time. And the volume of email coming into your inbox in the IT space, probably more so than any other vertical,
Hmm.
maybe healthcare and some others, but I mean, you get what I'm saying? Like I probably have 300 emails in my inbox right now, and hopefully by the end of today, I'll have it down to somewhere around 40 or 50. I am not reading every single one of those emails. So if my score, good, bad, or otherwise, is going to be tied to how I handle that message to report back to the quote, tool or whatever that's sending that out to me,
Right.
good, I failed. The only thing that should be really important to the organization is that I didn't fall for it more so than what I did with it next, as long as I didn't open it or click on the link.
Right. You get to a very important point, Chris. One of the other fatal flaws of this fake email testing is that there are individuals in every organization, most often at the top of the organization, that only ever read email under duress. So if
Sure,
there's a thought process that these fake email tests are measuring and teaching, they're not. They're not measuring those individuals who don't open the email, first of all. That could be 50% of your population. And they're not a training mechanism. They're an enforcement of knowledge that you may never have learned. So,
sure.
I get this all the time. A new MSP comes out, they want to do fake email testing as their first step, get a baseline. That's like going into a genetics class on the first day and the professor saying, I'm going to measure you today. We're going to give you the final exam today to see how stupid you are. And then at the end of the semester, I'm going to prove how great a teacher I am because you're all going to pass that test and I'm going to show that you learned all this knowledge.
Because I have the best flashcards.
Exactly. So why do we do it in IT? We would never do that in an educational classroom.
Let me ask you a question, and this is you can I'm pretty confident you can answer this question. Um, I love it when someone explains to me that they had a challenge related to email.
Hmm.
Maybe something was getting blacklisted. They were getting, going to the spam folder, fill in the blank, reasons why it wasn't front of mind where it should be in the inbox. And then I'll go and look and go, wow, well, your SPF record has some
Hmm.
really interesting things in it. It's accurate from the way it's satisfying the variable requirements to be a valid SPF record, but you have things in there that cause undue duress on your entire organization because of things like, why do you have the at symbol in there? Yeah, not sure on that. Why do you have these third party oh, we used to use those, but you don't
Mhm.
anymore. No, we don't use them anymore. Okay, so but they're still in there. And then you put in like they'll put the hyphen all, which that's great because that means that everything else that's not in there is going to fail. But then you're like you don't have DMARC and DKIM set up. Oh, yeah. I go, I'm not proposing that your SPF is necessarily wrong or trying to, beat someone up over it, but like when you're scoring a 3 or a 4 on your SPF, DMARC, DKIM, your overall imposter, it is mind-boggling that these are the same organizations that are still relying on, business email compromise and phishing, all kinds of fake email simulations, and they don't even have their own records configured to reduce the probability of that kind of stuff showing up in the first place.
Absolutely. Each of those records are designed to help different groups of individuals. Your SPF is how you can securely deliver email to the internet, protecting your domain from impersonation alongside DKIM and DMARC. So you're not setting those things up to always protect your own users. You're also
Sure,
setting up to protect your clients because
which
someone
is a
out
great place
there
to start, right?
yeah, someone out there could send an invoice to one of your clients pretending to be your CFO, and without those settings correct, your client's going to get it, and they're going to not recognize the S on the end of your domain name that was added by the hacker because no one knows typo squatting very well these days, and they're going to try to pay that invoice. It's a tragedy. There are simple things that IT departments and MSPs ought to be fixing. SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are one of them. Now, there's even more security coming down the pike. There's now DNSSEC. There's some other security DNS settings you can put in. I have to do more research on them myself, but
Sure.
this is a common problem and it can help reduce the amount of spam, the amount of fake emails that are getting sent not only to your company but to your clients.
Well, and this gets into you've got to stop just satisfying the rules too, right? Like, so look, I got a 10. Okay, well, you got a 10, but you don't actually have a policy, right? Like, no, no, I have DMARC in there. You do? Yeah, it's set to policy equals none. Or policy equals even when it says quarantine, I'm like, really? I mean, I want to see more. Like, I can understand if you've got some tools in place, your proof points of the world, but like it floors me that we're so quick to focus on how do I train employees or clients' employees on, business email compromise and stuff we already talked about. Who cares what kind it is, right? Phishing, smishing, whatever. The reality is if we don't make sure that we have a clean as possible environment to begin with, we have no business trying to educate someone on what to watch out for
Mhm.
because we're not watching out like that. That's like saying, hey, I joined the neighborhood watch. There's been a lot of break-ins lately. Okay. Do you have any security systems in your house? Well, the second floor, all of our windows are locked. Okay. This still hasn't answered my question, but it's like saying, and everybody in the neighborhood has a key to everybody else's houses. I'm like, okay, so obviously whoever's robbing is either getting through with they're not part of the neighborhood, right? So they're obviously the bad guy. Like, who do you trust? Because the
Right.
reality is we all know how to look under the rug to look for the key, right?
Mhm.
Like, so are you concerned about security or are you concerned about appearances?
Right. Right. I don't disagree.
But I don't know
I,
where my analogy was going with the house and the neighborhood watch because I really went
well,
off a cliff there.
it's very simple. I would say anybody listening to this, if you make your house a little bit more lit up than your neighbors and you have a fence around the yard and maybe a dog in the yard and maybe your windows are closed and your doors are closed and you have camera surveillance or anything that can make you a more difficult target, then the hackers are opportunistic. They're going to go to
Right.
the neighbor's house that has less things. So as business owners listening to this or MSPs, you got to make yourself just hard enough that it's not too expensive and it's enough to deter the attacks that occur.
Well, you bring up a really good point. Remember the wet bandits
I don't. What's
from
this?
Home Alone?
Oh, yes, 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 I do.
Like if you think about the strategy that they had, everybody's on vacation, they knew it. They and really, the Kevin is literally the advocate or and the hero in the story because of the actions that he takes are all the things that we used to do in the 90s, right? Like, oh yeah, get the lights on the timers. That will deter the bad guys because they won't break in because they'll see the light come on and they'll assume somebody's home. That was the entire premise of the web bandit strategy, was to figure out if they were gone for however long.
Right,
Remember,
exactly.
he impersonated the cop. He goes door to door knocking and, finding out things like, well, how long are you going to be gone? Where are you going? It was just brilliant.
Yeah.
But I think it goes hand in hand with, like, yeah, make sure you lock stuff.
And it goes hand in hand with social media where people publish, look at me on the beaches in Tahiti with my wife and
Right.
kids. Oh my God, you're just announcing to the world that no one's at home, right?
Right. And that one's a really hard one, and I won't go into details on some of the individuals that I've recently had conversations because they probably listen to the show and they would immediately know that I was talking about them, and I don't want to shame them, huh? Shaming. But you're
Mm,
right. Like there's a fixation on, the thumbs up, right? The clicks, the how many have looked at what I posted, yay me, I got, 500 likes, right?
mhm.
But that doesn't mean you can't post it. Just don't do it while you're there. Like,
Right.
I think that that's part that's really missed here. And and not to go down the political rabbit hole, but like one of the things I find interesting is in social media when it comes to politics, if you really want to, going back to like phishing campaigns and that kind of thing, how easy it is to manipulate somebody by following their social media feeds and looking at the things that they do or don't like that are
Mhm.
unrelated to their personal friends groups.
Right. Absolutely. There's actually Fraud GPT and a couple of other AI bots that will ingest a social media profile and come up with 10 super appealing phishing simulations, somewhat called spear phishing
Sure.
or whaling if it's a senior leader in a company. And these are really believable. The only thing protecting the senior leaders of companies is they don't read email until they have to. And then they're going in clicking like crazy.
Well, if we followed the logic of the book Whale Done, I
Mhm.
think whaling, if done correctly, can be very successful using positive reinforcement.
Oh, there you go. I like it. That's another nuance on the whole theory.
There's no bad guys that listen to this show, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But I do want to I have to go soon because I have to go put some money over to this Nigerian prince bringing oil out of, some African country.
Right. That's been dry for 6 years, but yes.
Hmm. Yeah. No.
It's the money that's locked in a vault that you can't get to because, somehow you magically found me and I have the other key.
Yeah, that's right. What I
That's
will
not
do,
suspicious.
I'll put one more thing in perspective.
Please do.
There's a comment that was made recently, and I'm not sure I can source this, but I heard this the other day. The top three economies in the world last year were quite obviously the United States, multiple trillions of dollars, China, multiple trillions of dollars, but not quite as many as the United States. The third largest economy in the world was not a country, it was cybercrime and the payments and profits from all the aggregate of cybercrime, from ransomware, business email compromise, wire fraud, all sorts of extortion attempts, was the third largest economy. It's in the trillions of dollars, and it's going to grow faster than the US economy or China's economy. It is just out of control. So if you think, ah, it'll never happen to me, I'm too small, it's not going to be a problem for me, it's already happening to everyone. No one's talking about it because they're too embarrassed to admit that they paid $100,000 for this ransomware or that event, or they wired it to nowhere. You have to get serious about this if you're a business owner. If you're listening to this
Yep.
and you don't have a plan, you are fish in a barrel. The FBI have a
Ha
common
ha ha.
saying.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. The FBI have a common saying. There are two kinds of companies in this world. The first are those that know they've been breached. The second is
They
those
don't
that
know.
don't know they've been breached.
Right. And I think the reality is it's all about how do you minimize the repercussions of said event, right? The more
Yep,
you know, the more you can reduce the probability of significant damage.
yep,
It also goes hand in hand. I like those that don't know that they've been, yeah, and you hear it all the time. But I also think there's more to it than that. I think that one thing you hear a lot is if I would have only known. And it's like, well, if you ask questions, that's how you get into the know. You're being called upon to be the IT services for your clients. How well are you doing IT services for yourself?
Right.
Don't be the, what is it, the shoemaker. Don't be the kids with no shoes.
Yeah, exactly
So,
right.
any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
There are some really devious attacks going on right now. I was part of one that I helped with. I got a call the other day. Gentleman calls me, says, "My bank just called me. Someone's in my bank account trying to wire money. How could this have happened?" Fast forward a few hours, we learned that he was subscribed to 20 to 50 mailing lists, all without they're supposed to send you an email that says, "Chris, did you want to subscribe to this mailing list? Click here to confirm." They're not doing that. There's mailing lists all over the world.
Sure.
And he was subscribed to these 50 mailing lists. So he said, "I couldn't handle my inbox anymore. I started unsubscribing with that little blue link at the bottom of every email." One of them was an evil proxy. So what does
Oh,
that
wow.
mean? Evil proxy reaches into your computer and says, "Hey, do you have an authentication token for your bank or your email that you're reading this in? And if you do, I'll have that, thank you," and gives it to the hacker in real time. Hacker is now in your mailbox or your bank, and he was attempting to transfer funds out of the bank account, but MFA blocked him, thank God, from that bank account. One of my incidents this year was a bank account that didn't do that, and $100,000 just poof and vanished because someone reached in and got that token, that session token. A session token is nothing more than this little identifier that says you've already authenticated to your email
Right.
and your bank. So every different page and thing you try to do isn't asking you to log in with your username, password, and multi-factor authentication. It's authentication tokens, and they should be protected, but they're not. So the hacker
Right.
reached in through this unsubscribe link, stole it, and was in his email sending messages like, "Here's an invoice for this, and here's an invoice for that."
And that
It
gets
was a
into why
nightmare.
tools like Unroll.me and others have come into play to help solve some of that, right? You use that to have it identify, hey, these are all the mailing lists you have. Here's the actual websites for those. Do they look
Well,
familiar?
that's one way. If that costs money or doesn't, I don't know. But the better way, in my opinion, is just to market spam, especially if they didn't confirm that you wanted that mailing list, because that's netiquette. That's best practices. If
Sure.
someone wants your mailing list, send them did you really want this? Because someone else might have subscribed you. Click here to validate you. And if you don't have any of those validations, then they
Right.
deserve that spam recorded. Because if you mark something spam, first of all, you'll never get another email from that domain. Secondly, it dings their DNS records for, veracity or the reputation of
Right.
their website. And those are two things they deserve. Never to send me another email and have a negative mark on their domain for not having validated my email address.
For sure.
And it doesn't tell the spammer or the hacker, A, you don't give your session tokens away. B, you're not confirming your email exists when you actually unsubscribe from things, because then they know they've got a legitimate email. So
Right.
there's benefits all the way around.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Craig. For those of you listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks and have a great week.